Freak out. I do. Well, hey there. It's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol. That's wavetables.lol, home of KRC Mathwaves, the world's largest collection of wavetables, single-cycle waveforms, and even some samples, which we actually heard one of, for all sorts of modern synthesizers. And today I want to take a look at a new Soundpaint library called Disco Vintage Guitars, or I think in some places it's called Vintage Disco Guitars. Anyway, it's Soundpaint Disco Guitars, which we heard in the intro, which is a big pastiche of all sorts of disco tropes and funk tropes, and even a little bit of old school industrial, eh? I want to talk about that a little bit, but first, I guess it's been a little while since I made a video. I guess this one's coming about 3 weeks after my previous one, which was about 303 sounds in Korg multi-poly and other stuff like that. It's not like I really took some time off, but one, I was kind of waiting for disco guitars because it's just something I really want to talk about. I've been excited about this library for a while now. See my previous video about Soundpaint Disco Strings if you want if you want to look at that library as well. But we'll probably talk about it a little bit in this video as well. I took a little longer break than usual between videos. A couple things that have been going on. It was the 25th anniversary of not my wedding, but of meeting my wife, and we went away for a couple of days up to Tomales Bay, which is up north of San Francisco. There's multiple bays in the Bay Area, and we went up there. And one thing that was really fun about that trip is we stopped in Petaluma for lunch on our way up to a place that we'd rented that was like right out on the water in Tomales Bay. We stopped at the Petaluma outlet malls, and like a lot of malls, it's not an indoor mall, it's an outdoor mall. Like a lot of malls of that ilk, it's not fully rented by, factory outlet stores. So there's actually like a couple of like local businesses that are in this mall, and one of them is a really fantastic place. I just wanted to share with you if you're into like weird fiction and like role-playing games, which is something I don't talk about. I don't really get to play role-playing games, but I still enjoy reading them, and I enjoy hearing about them. And what else? Just all sorts of, kind of alternative content stuff. At this really cool store called Word Horde, Emporium of the Weird and Fantastic. And this was like the most well-curated, like, sci-fi gaming horror bookstore that I've seen in like years and years. And they do have a site. There'll be links in the description. There's always links in the description. And I don't buy a lot of physical books anymore, right? Because, a lot things are, more or less available online. But like there was just some beautiful things in there. And so I picked up like a few new things. I don't have like a lot of like RPG zines or anything. But look at this beautiful book for an indie RPG called Death in Space that struck me as being very inspired by Heavy Metal Magazine, which is not which isn't actually credited as an inspiration. There's kind of more recent things, but I was like, oh, this whole thing is like it's very sort of punk and weird and has cool art and this holographic cover, and I couldn't not like pick this up. So it was an interesting read, kind of inspiring in a like kind of a sci-fi surrealism way. It's probably a game I'll never like actually play, but it was really interesting. Has a lot of interesting thoughts in it. And then let's see, what else do they have? In the horror category, I picked up this. I'm not sure how good this is, but this is a book called Under Twin Suns that is a bunch of more modern works inspired by Chambers, The King in Yellow, the Yellow Sign, and the what is it called? The Repairer of Reputations. Like just very weird, very early and very weird fiction from um, a fellow named Chambers, who was mostly like kind of a romance writer, but also um, wrote a bunch of wrote a few classic works of weird fiction. And so I'm working my way through that. That's kind of fun. And then another like beautiful book. I didn't know about this one. This one's a few years old now. But this book with a collection of essays about the Satanic Panic from the 80s, which is something that I find very interesting. And it's got like lots of great images from the time. Like this picture of Venom from the 80s. Like I you know I was not into that kind of heavy metal music in the 80s. I'm more of a new wave guy. But I think if this trend happened again today, I'd probably be totally into like metal with silly costumes. Anyway, so that's a thing. Go check that out. That's really interesting. You know, in my videos, which are long talky videos, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer and other stuff content. Um, I like to tell you all about like what I've been up to since you've seen me last. Anyway, that's that. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about? Maybe this is the time where I say I'm going to take a short break and then let's take a closer look at Soundpaint Disco Guitars. All right. So, Soundpaint Disco Guitars. Let's see here. Where is it? So just a couple days ago, a day before yesterday, I think, Soundpaint released a new sample collection for their sampler thing called Soundpaint, which I've looked at before in the past in a more recent video. We looked at their Juniper, like Jupiter 8, deep sampled Jupiter 8 library. That's really cool. And I've also in the past looked at Soundpaint Disco Strings, which is a really beautiful and deep library that does all the classic disco string writing tropes and articulations. And is a very, very good product. This one is a little bit smaller, but it covers, the wakka-wakka-wakka kind of guitars from funk and disco. And it's just $30, and I think it's well worth the money. So there's the short review. I think this thing is really fun. It's a very interesting library in terms of its approach. As you heard in the intro track, we're using this collection of samples, and you can see that. Let's see. Let me move this a little bit, You can see that there's a whole bunch of different articulations that are all kind of like chopped up into little bits of sound, and we're not listening to the pure the pure samples here. I do have effects on them. There are two versions of all of the kits. They're like little guitar kits. Like you're kind of used to drum kits. You might not be used to guitar kit. I think this is a really interesting approach where what they did is they took, I don't know, is it 9? How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, like 9 like seminal disco tracks, and then basically kind of recorded like some vamps on those songs in the same key and in a similar tempo to what the original tracks were recorded in. But then the individual samples of the guitar playing were cut up into these shorter and longer, like mix and match pieces that you can use to construct new grooves. Like, which is very interesting. And as Trolls from Soundpaint has pointed out in the couple of videos that he's done about this collection, is it kind of encourages you to play off the grid and kind of come up with your own, funky progressions and stuff like that. It's very interesting that it's based on these different kind of tracks. And where I was going with this, I make long talky videos. What are you going to do about it? Where I was going with this is there's actually two versions of the 9 kits. There's a version that's like a DI version. So, it like direct to the board, not through an amp. Maybe there's an amp simulator in that chain. But it's not mimicking, like a vintage amp or anything. It's like they're there for you to be able to affect in the way that you want. And then the same kits are laid out with a vintage amp model on them. And so you can just swap them out. So like, I guess we could go and get the vintage amp one, and let's turn off the effects I have. I'm using Bitwig here today. Let's see. It's this track, and any excuse to use guitar rig. I really like, of all of the Native Instruments stuff, I really like guitar rig because it's just like this nice effects rack. You can use it on a whole bunch of different things besides guitars, right? And it's kind of just fun to work with, and I hadn't worked with it in a while. So I had for my little demo track, I'd used the DI version of one of these kits, and then I put my own vintage amp on it because I wanted the auto wah, and I wanted like a spring reverb type of sound. So I put this preset, what's it called, Strat Funky Auto Filter, and adjusted it a little bit till I got the sound I wanted. Anyway, let's shut that off and let's hear the vintage version of this kit. That might be a little quieter. I mean, these are very convincing emulations. Well, I mean, they're actual recordings, right? But it's a very good emulation of the original style. And what I wanted to do is just turn the freaking volume up. There we go. So it sounds pretty nice, and you can compare the difference, I guess, with the DI version. Right? Sounds like a little bit different from the modern DI. It's kind of nice and rounded and sweet. It's a very interesting version. Now, of course, in my use of this kit, which is based on Chic's Le Freak, right? You can kind of hear that. You can hear all those kind of tropes. We're just playing up the keyboard. So it's really cool what you can do with these. Let's play it up a little higher here. I like this improv section in this one. And I use that a lot in the demo track. So anyway, I wanted to make this like a little less in a disco style, but more in like a 70s funk kind of style. So, I wanted to get that wah-wah in here. And now there are kits that actually do have wah-wah in them, which is interesting. But this really makes this patch a lot more aggressive. And, a little bit more funky, I would say. Pretty fun stuff. So, you've got all sorts of different kits. Like, what's Midnight Boogie, I assume, is based on Boogie, Oogie, Oogie. Yeah. There is a phaser section down here where we've got the guitar recorded with a phaser. Let's turn off our effects again. Let's turn off a guitar rig. Oh no, this is something else. It's not Boogie Oogie Oogie. It's a different one. Boy, it's hard to say Boogie Oogie Oogie, isn't it? Let's check that one out. Anyway, pretty nice, diverse collection of stuff. It's about 3,600, I guess, samples. And there's different effects. Huh. Like this solo section up here, you can construct all sorts of interesting guitar solos. And like I've said in the previous video, you can scratch a synthesizer programmer and find a synth. Okay, you can scratch a synthesizer programmer and find a frustrated guitarist underneath that. So this is very satisfying. For those of us who are not good guitar players. Anyway, super cool collection of stuff. Let's go back to our original funkified version here. And maybe look at another couple of ideas with Soundpaint Disco Guitars. So for my fake 70s cop show theme here, which I'm calling the theme from Disco Cops, and I'm shocked that there's not like a blaxploitation movie or an actual series that was called Disco Cops. Like it'd be a natural thing to do, right? So. I'm just imagining like, what would that theme sound like, right? And, produce a record 34 seconds of music for me, right? So if we listen to the intro again, and I had to dial this back so it's maybe not so loud again. So in the intro, you hear that little freak out. You hear that little guitar thing that's going on. So there's another version of that same patch that has a different effect treatment on it. So in this case, I used Guitar Rig. Come on, Guitar Rig, you can do it. I used Guitar Rig where I further customized this Strat Funky auto filter patch to have this psychedelic delay in it and more of a true like kind of dub style spring reverb. So it's like freaky. It's freaky and weird and, kind of, it's, dubby. And I use that with these improv samples that are up at the, where are they? Here they are. Just to make some weird kind of guitar effects, right? So this library doesn't have to sound like, purely clean, smooth disco stuff. You can do all sorts of other weird things with it if you exercise your creativity. So that gets a little work out there. And another thing I think is really interesting, and this is true for Soundpaint Disco Strings as well, like a little bit of this library can really go a long way. Like if you look at the patterns here that I'm playing and using, like they're not complicated at all, right? Like, you've been looking at the keyboard, so you can see the notes that are being played, but they're really just these simple monophonic lines that I tried to play in with a sense of groove. Like in here, let's see. Do we even get much here with the psychedelic guitar? I think it's really just one hit. And then in this middle section, let's see. Come on. Come on, you can show it. You can show it, Bitwig. This is a pretty simple little pattern. I played that in. Anyway, and so then the whole thing, right? Let's just focus on the guitars. But then, in the context of a full arrangement, right? So it's so cool. I took a deeper look at disco strings from Soundpaint in a previous video. Go watch that. There'll be links in the description, maybe a link over around my head somewhere. But this library is equally wonderful. Again, with specific string articulations that are inspired by classic disco tracks, and there's no other library that's like really deep sampled like this. And you don't have to just use it for disco. You could use it for soul and funk and modern pop writing, like what we might call new disco, like we hear in a lot of, say, like Sabrina Carpenter tracks or Dua Lipa tracks. It's studio strings, so it's not orchestral strings. Now, I like to use these runs, so we like open this little demo with a run. So again, that's just as simple as like, you just hit the right key. Super nice effect. But then I've also made use of the ornaments, and the ornaments are these very interesting articulations that, let's see, let's get this one up. This is this 2-note fast ornament. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. And there's a lot of different variations on these. So there's an up to down. And then two of the same notes, like a quick stroke back and forth. You're just not going to find that in a lot of like orchestral libraries. Super cool, super cool. Anyway, where I was going with that is these kinds of like sort of studio strings, like there's 7 players in here doing these very convincing disco articulations. We hear that in like modern pop music, we hear it in mainstream disco, but then sometimes in like 70s soul, we actually hear orchestral strings, and I'm kind of thinking about things like Isaac Hayes' theme from Shaft, with, you know, the classic Waka Waka theme everybody knows, right? Who is the private dick who's a sex machine to all the chicks? Well, it's Shaft. We all know that, damn right. Um, Everyone knows that track, but that whole score, like that whole soundtrack is like fantastic. And if you can find it, I assume this must be on the streaming services, but it may not be. If you can find it on vinyl though, it's a 2 album set, and I think it might be the third and fourth sides, but maybe it's just the fourth. There's an entire album side that's like music that's not in the film. And it's just like the coolest, most inspirational kind of chill soul music. It's fantastic. So go look that up. Go try to find Isaac Hayes' complete theme from Shaft score, because the very, very last side of it is really, really cool. So anyway, so like Isaac Hayes, like if he were, doing something today with like a string library, he might actually reach for an orchestral library instead of this kind of pop studio sound. And so in my little mock-up here, I gave a little nod to that. There is Contact in here, and I've talked about how, like, Contact is fine, but it's a little long in the tooth, and I gotta say, I greatly prefer Soundpaint. There we go. Yeah, we used some French horns in this. And this set of samples here actually is from 8DO, which is related to Soundpaint. The same person, Trolls, is behind it. But not all of the 8DO libraries have Soundpaint versions yet. Like, maybe we'll see them at some point. But also 8DO, so if you are an 8DO user, and I'm not sure exactly what collection this is, it must be Studio, sorry, it must be the Century Brass. So these are this particular patch is these long French horn arcs that are very, very nice. And so I did mix some of that in, fairly low in volume, just to give a little more orchestral feel. We should talk about the drums really quick, because I am using Unify here. So in my most recent video, we looked at Unify, which I'm starting to get into, and the excellent Groove Summit collection from PuginGuru, who also makes Unify. There's some really cool grooves in here, and you can customize them quite a bit. Like I said in my original video about it, it's very much like Stylus RMX, so which isn't supported anymore and you can't even buy. But I was like, hey, there's this really cool disco groove in here. And I've modified this a little bit. I took out the bright percussion from this and put it into its own track so that I could mute it separately. I know I could have automated that, but I'm not super good with Bitwig automation, and it was just faster to cut out the part of the main beat that I didn't want and just have it in a separate track. And Unify is extremely CPU efficient, so it doesn't hurt to just duplicate the track and just have different arrangements in each section. So I think this one should just be the high percussion. Yeah. Maybe needs a bit more cowbell, wouldn't you say? So anyway, those two pieces, I guess we could hear them real quick together. Just solo them out. See how I automated at least I can do volume automation, okay? Give me a participation trophy. So I just brought the other one in after the intro, right? And then eventually the main beat goes away, and we just hear the high percussion for a bit for the breakdown that starts here at like bar 17. Anyway, it's such a wonderful collection, and Unify is a very cool piece of software as well. Can we even hear the horns? Where are the horns? I mean, I was just talking about the horns. Oh, there they are. Yeah! Maybe I should have mixed it like this. Anyway, it's fun to kind of blend those different styles of libraries, right? And I could have built out that brass a lot more. But I'm still downloading a bunch of the 8-DO libraries. So I think I was going to mention this before, and then I got distracted, as I do. They made an offer over email, and so if you own any of the 8-DO brass libraries or 8-DO strings libraries, they've put them on special, and you can contact their support to get like a customized discount. So if you have nearly everything, right, you can get the rest of the library for, tens of dollars. If you've got just a few of them, you can actually fill out the collection, which is gigabytes and gigabytes of brass and string content, for around the order of $100. So I took advantage of that, and then I was just like, I was a little blown away by how much content there was. Like, I'm still downloading all these libraries and installing them. So that's a cool offer. Know about that. I'll put a link in the description to 8-DO as well. Another thing that I did here, I don't have a flute instrument that I really love, but I do have a collection of, they're sort of loops. They're more like little fragments, like the kind of like disco guitars, except not in an interface. And so I have these like groovy flute samples that are playing in here. Oops, I didn't mean to make a thing there. Let's just play that. And adjust the pitch in some of these a little bit, and, kind of constructed some very simple little flute lines. That's a thing you hear in Theme from Shaft. Oh, and that's our friend Maurice White from Earth, Wind, and Fire. May he rest in peace. Samples from an old Ensoniq library that are called Mauricisms. And he's just got such a distinctive speaking voice as well as a distinctive singing voice. It would be a shame to do a little mock-up like that and not include the funky vocal stylings of Maurice White. Right, and so then, all together, let's see, switch that out of solo mode. You did. So anyway, you get the idea of how you can use all these tools together. Of course, because I love modwave and multipoly so much, I did include a modwave native in here to do these like Syn-Toms. I also used these in my look at Soundpaint Disco Strings. And so now it's time in our program where we do the shameless plug. The way I did these synthetic toms is there's just a standard one of the factory wavetables for the pew pew, right? It's just a triangle wave, but the noise that's underneath that is this noise sample that is a loop called sand, and that's part of Varieties of Noise, which is the sample library that's a whole bunch of noise and noise-inspired samples that you can use in all sorts of synthesizers or samplers. that's part of KRC Mathwaves. So Mathwaves is typically $29. There is a discount code that I've been using for a while called Sandra. There'll be a link in the description. You can get 160,000 wavetables and the Varieties of Noise sample library for just $20 over at wavetables.lol. And then that's, anyway, one of those noises is used here in my synthetic toms. And this patch only took me like a minute to spin up, but I really love it. It reminds me, I mean, of course it's based on like a Simmons tom, but this specific sound sounds a lot like some of Duran Duran's drums. It's very powerful and fun. So it sounds 80s, it sounds 70s. I really like it. So of course I had to use it in two different places. And then for the little synth part that you hear, I'm using multi-poly with the little patch that I ginned up. That's just a Minimoog style patch. It's mono and it's got legato mode on, right? So you can do things like this. This is an idea that hadn't occurred to me actually, but there's all that drama and there's all the pitch sweeps in the disco string articulations. But if we have like a mono legato synth patch, we can do stuff like if we play a flam, right? Like from a high key to a low key, we can get stuff like that. Like that's kind of a classic sort of funky figure that you hear in a lot of music, right? But you're really just, let's show the keyboard, Keith. You can see what I'm doing. I'm just hitting two keys with a flam. We could go up if we want to. Why am I so mush-mouthed today? Sorry about that. Like and subscribe for more mush-mouth synthesizer content. And I almost made this patch, and I will add this, by the way, to KRC Collection 1, my collection of patches for Korg Multi-Poly. I've got a few new patches I want to put in there, but I'm going to wait until maybe I've got about 20 more patches and add them to the 90 that are already there. And I did use one of my own custom wavetables in Oscillator 3. I was going to say I almost wanted just to use the classic oscillators, so there's a saw and a pulse here, but then of course I couldn't resist using something that's a little higher energy, and so there's just a little extra added weirdness here. With a let's listen to it. Move the cutoff up. Kind of a different sort of spectral waveform. That then when we mix it with these two guys and have our filter cut off and our resonance is pretty high. It just adds a little extra brightness to it. What did I even play here? Oh, well, here's the thing. So when I was doing this track, the last thing I did was like the synth bass line. And there's already like so much stuff going on in it that I'm like, I'm not really sure how this bass line should go. And so, when you get stuck like that, and of course, I'm not like a great composer, okay? I'm not, I'm not an incredible recording artist, right? I'm a sound designer and a synth programmer and a messer around with mathematics and synthesis. So, I'm really good at that kind of stuff. I call synthesis the science and art of sub-musical sound. So I'm very skilled in sub-musical sound. I am less skilled as a player and composer. But one of the things that can really help you when you're stuck on like, how should something go, is to use a reference track. And I'm going to mention in a minute someone that I recently discovered on YouTube who it has a bunch of videos that are like really interesting uses of reference tracks. And so I was like, okay, well, the style of it isn't exactly like this track, but like I'm a big fan of Earth, Wind and Fire, right? Like we talked about Morris White recently, or just previously. God, get it together, Cross. we talked about Morris White, and I was like, well, what would Earth, Wind, and Fire do? And so I love, like everybody else loves, I love Let's Groove. And of course, the algorithm recently on YouTube served me up um, this live performance from 1981 that I hadn't seen before. And I was like, oh, let's just like listen again to the bass line from Let's Groove, because that's synthy, right? It's got the vocoder, and then I think there's also an electric bass in there. It's like what did they do? So like let's get a little bit of Let's Groove into this. And so let's listen for a minute. Or
So you like the groove, huh?
yeah. Okay, so that's Morris White. So we're gonna get to the bass line here. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. Does it change? No, it does not change. I mean, there's a little bit of syncopation sometimes. Wait, but like, does it ever change through the remainder of this awesome song? Okay, wait. It's just like a vamp that goes through like the whole song. Like the bass line's the same. So like, I guess for like funky writing, you don't necessarily have to change anything up. And, this is the thing, actually. Like, a lot of funk tracks have kind of the same thing as, like, techno, for example. It's the repetition that creates authority, and we're not necessarily, it's about the groove, right? We're not necessarily, like, doing fancy key changes or trying to show our virtuosity. So given the chord progression that's in here already, and the fact that I love early industrial dance music, I'm like, let's just steal the bass line, right, from Every Day is Halloween by Ministry. And so like that's what I did. So just do that. And then, I played it in a little funkier, right? I'm sure that with legatos and stuff. And it's not perfect. We want that imperfection. The imperfection is part of the funk, right? I'm playing ahead and behind a little bit. And then when the drums are in there, like it all starts to make sense. Oh, hold on. We gotta start earlier so we hit the drums. See, it's a little bit funky, right? Yes, Keith, yes, you're saying you're a funky white guy. We acknowledge it. It's fine. Well, there you go. The theme from an imaginary cop show called Disco Cops. Okay, I mean, there's a couple more things I want to talk about, but I have to see how long I've been blabbering on at you right now. I hope you enjoyed that look at Soundpaint Disco Guitars and a little bit look at Disco Strings, and, a little bit of Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm going to take a short break, and then we'll be back and talk about a few more things. All right. Before I leave that multi-poly patch, I should probably say, because I didn't really talk about what it was doing. If if you'd like to know more, hey, come on, come up. What are you doing? There it is. So this patch is like emulating a Minimoog, and there is in fact a template in Multipoly that's like Minimoog in it, or like Minimoog template, where all this stuff is set up for you. But I had just started with my own init patch and like selected the mini LP filter, then, set all my envelopes, right, to be Minimoog style. So I'm using the Minimoog style curves in the filter envelope and the amp envelope. And then again, it's mono and mono legato so that it doesn't re-trigger the envelopes. And then in setup, wait, see, no, it's not setup. Sorry. In Portamento, we're using the vintage mini Portamento, and it's fingered. And so fingered glide is when you play legato, it causes the pitch to swoop up or down. And that's how you get that effect. Okay, so that's what fingered Portamento means. Get your mind out of the gutter. Okay. Other stuff. Since we were talking about disco guitars, which there's a great intro video for, there'll be a link in the description. There's always links in the description. I also am going to point you there to the Disco Strings walkthrough. And even if you're not interested in this product itself, this video by Soundpaint is actually fantastic because it talks a little bit about the history and cultural importance of disco and dance music and where that comes from. And it's good to be reminded of the history behind that music. Okay? And I'm just going to say that. That's the political portion of our conversation today. Let's see. I often do friends of the channel, and now this person is not specifically a friend of the channel, but the algorithm suggested this channel to me recently. The charming Vinnie Debray, who's a Montreal-based like the film scorer who does short films. Her channel is full of interesting inspiration. And her videos are much shorter than mine. You know, they're on that 10 to 20 minute kind of range. But really cool ideas about making good use of like a minimal music composition setup. That's not a problem for me, but like she makes great use of like the built-in tools in Ableton and things like that. And also, I don't know why this is in the ether for me or like why this is in my algorithm, but in the same way that Soundpaint Disco Guitars is kind of based on reference tracks, right? They're not really recreations, but they are either they're emulations of styles of music that are heavily based on like deep study of seminal disco tracks. One approach that Vinnie uses in a lot of her scoring work is, and because of the way scoring works, right? She gets sent a lot of reference tracks, and there's several really interesting videos of her like kind of listening to a reference track and then, you know, pulling out what kind of makes that track distinctive. And so some of these are compositional things and some of them are sound design kind of things, but super interesting. And she has like a really funky and funny personality. So fantastic channel. Go subscribe to that. Let's see. What else did I want to talk about? I guess that's it. Oh, I showed some books and I talked about some books because, you know, I sometimes mention like what I'm reading, or sometimes I've done videos about little books, right? Like the Casio CZ 101 manual. Angela Collier is a physicist who also has a books channel, but her latest video called Women in Space, But It Sucks, that is only 9 hours old right now, is fantastic. And you should go watch Angela Collier. If you like talky synthesizer content, but you would like to have some talky content about other topics like physics and gender issues and things like that, her channel is fantastic. But anyway, it's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol. Like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. It's mostly about synthesizer content here. We occasionally go off on other tangents, as befits my mood. Be good to each other, have fun, do something creative, engage in spontaneous creativity, even if you don't feel like doing art, right? Because that's a good way to flex your art muscles and develop your creativity. That's my tip for today. Go visit the links, watch this stuff, make some new friends. I will talk to you later.